Today we're going to be doing a simple oil change on a Kawasaki Bayou 220. We've had this machine for several years. We bought it used from a friend of mine. It is my 12-year-old son's primary means of transportation, so it's been rode hard and put up wet. As you can tell, it doesn't get a bath very often. As soon as it starts, the throttle goes to the wide open position where it stays for probably most of the day. So this is a tough machine, but it's mainly still here because of, frequent oil changes and checks. We've had problems with four-wheelers in the past where the operator did not check the oil, ran it dry, lost compression completely, and ruined it. So with a simple oil change, you can prevent things like that. Now here, I'm going to show you the business end of how to check the oil here. This is your sight glass. There's two hash marks there. One there, one right above it. Your oil level should be somewhere in between. That's just your daily checks before you operate the machine. Over here, something that people might neglect to do every now and then, there's an oil filter behind here, and if it's not installed correctly, you will not have oil pressure very long, I believe is the case. I think there's a hole in there or something that has to be oriented correctly. We're going to show you all about how to do that. The drain plug on these machines is underneath. There's an oil pan already there. We're going to warm it up for a little bit, get the engine up to normal operating temperature, and then drain the oil. Okay, what you're going to need to get your oil changed in that Bayou 220 is an oil filter, some oil. I like to use some gloves, some paper towels. You have an 8mm socket. That is to pull the bolts off of the oil filter housing. A 17mm socket for your drain pan. I'm going to be using an extension that's not required, your ratchet, and of course a funnel and drain pan. Now I've got 3 quarts of oil here. You're actually going to need 2.11 quarts. And today, with the first day of winter is what it is, we're going to be using 10W40. Now I could go down to 10W30 and be just fine, but 10W40 covers the same range, as well as 10W50 for this particular engine. But that's what we're going to be using today. So get your tools together and let's drain the oil. Okay, I've got my oil pan placed underneath the engine, and I'm going to go ahead and show you where the drain plug is located on this machine. Not like it's hard to find, but hey, that's it right there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and remove that. Drain the oil into the pan. After you get it removed and you remove the plug and the washer, get your tools out of the way, you got everything draining into the pan, you want to go ahead and loosen the filler cap to allow air to come into the engine. It'll let everything drain faster. I'll go ahead and put this on a tripod and we'll get started. Okay, now that I've got both ends free, I'm going to go ahead and break there we go. Break the drain plug loose, loosen it up a little bit. Time to get the pan under there. See if we not make too big a mess. Alright, and I've verified I've got a washer and a drain plug here. I'm going to go ahead and loosen that filler cap, let some air in. and we're going to let this drain completely. Be back in a moment. Okay, as you can see, the oil has been drained. We'll get all that stuff out of there. We've got an occasional drip here and there. I'm not really too concerned about all that. You could actually let this sit there for quite some time and it would just drip and drip and drip. But hey, most of the bad stuff is out of there. Now what you want to do, take a paper towel, clean up your drain plug. Make sure your gasket's still in good shape. If you have another gasket, go ahead and use it. You also want to clean the mating surface that's on the bottom of the engine here, where that gasket is going to be sitting. Go ahead and clean that up. Put your drain plug back in place. And then tighten it. Don't get too crazy about how you tighten these things. I'll give you a torque spec here in a minute. I'm not going to torque it. I'm just telling you, you are tightening a steel bolt into an aluminum block or crankcase. So that was actually the ratchet that slipped, not the threads. Okay, just tighten it securely. You're just looking to squish that washer a little bit. The washer's made out of probably a copper, so it'll seal properly. You're going to see some stuff dripping out of here because this is a skid plate and some of the oil got on top of the skid plate. Alright, so the oil's out, the drain plug is back in. You know, one thing I didn't mention in the beginning of this video was one of the things that I do to try to keep people from running off with a vehicle that has no oil in it. I'll actually take, this is a clamp off an old light, and I've got the key attached to a clip here, the key to that vehicle. And on both sides there's a note that says there's no oil in it, and I'll take that clamp and I'll clamp it to the steering wheel or handlebars or whatever of the vehicle that's getting the oil change. You never know. It quite possibly could save the engine. There's a good reason I do that, and for those of you that know me when I was a teenager, you'll be able to tell everybody else, but hey, it wasn't my fault. So anyway, we're going to use an 8mm socket and go ahead and pull the cover off of this oil filter housing. Just try not to drop any of that stuff into the pan. And go ahead and let that drain out for a few minutes. We'll be right back. Okay, it looks like we've got all the oil drained out from the oil filter housing now. We can go ahead and remove that. So it's just 2 bolts. Try not to drop them. Now I said earlier that there was a right way and a wrong way to remove or to reinstall this oil filter. I'll make sure we go over that. If you'll look at this oil filter, you'll notice that there's a shaft that runs through it. Now that's part you're going to remove on your own. It has a small end. The small end goes towards the cap. And if you look at the cap, it fits right in there. If you tried to install this the other way, it wouldn't go. So if you've ever tried to do this and you couldn't get that cover to mate up, that was likely the reason. It just won't go. Okay. Small end goes towards the cap, large end goes inside the engine. So while you've got this off, you want to go ahead and inspect your O-ring. there is an O-ring. You're going to clean it, not with solvent. You're just going to wipe it off, put a little fresh oil on there, new oil, set it aside. Take the shaft out of your old oil filter. Now there is a test that you can conduct on this. I'm not going to go through it right now, but it's going to be basically a bypass test that you can conduct on this shaft. What will happen is if these oil filters are not changed periodically, they'll clog up so bad that there'll have to be a way for oil to get to the engine even if the oil filter is not being used, and that will save your engine. So what will happen is you're still circulating dirty oil through the engine, but at least you have oil. And that would only happen if you haven't been changing your oil filter. So change it. This oil really isn't that bad, but we do periodic oil changes on this thing, so it's not that bad. So let's go ahead and clean everything up. I'm going to go ahead and wipe off this O-ring. I'm just using a paper towel. There's nothing magical here. Okay, O-ring looks to be in good shape.
Still changing it?
It's eating my son up that I'm taking so long to change this oil. I'm going to put a little fresh oil in there, and the only reason I'm doing that is because I want some fresh oil on this O-ring. Set that aside. In this particular engine, we're using a K&N filter. It's number KN123. Got it off Amazon. I don't know, 10 bucks I think, delivered to my door. Use a little fresh oil here. You're just trying to lubricate that rubber boss there. Now this filter is not directional. You can install it either way you want, but hey, let's put the number on the outside about it. So the small end of the shaft will be facing the numbers on the filter, just like so. Okay, we're also going to clean this mounting surface here. This is where the O-ring is going to be resting. Like so. Okay. All right. So since we know which end of the shaft is oriented toward the letters on the filter. Okay, we got small end there. You can actually see the shaft is cut right there. You can see that. So we're going to go ahead and install the filter. Okay, we've lubricated the O-ring on the oil filter cover with fresh motor oil. And if you'll notice on the inside here, there's a cutout where that oil filter shaft will go. We're going to orient that cutout upward. And there's nothing in the manual that says if it's supposed to go up or down, but I can tell by the melted rubber on this cover from a boot that sat on this pedal here that this cover has been that way for a long time. So I'm going to maintain that orientation. So everything's clean. We're going to install it back together here. Slip that on there. Something just doesn't feel right here. It's just too good. Okay, yeah, it's in there. To make sure that shaft is in there, in that cutout. Go ahead and get your fastener started. I like to run them in basically finger tight. And this is another thing where you're getting ready to tighten a steel fastener inside an aluminum housing, so you don't want to get too crazy about it. Really all you need to do here is make sure the bolts don't fall out and your O-ring gets slightly squished, you know, and when you get all said and done, if it's leaking, you probably needed to change that O-ring. It's a good idea, it's just, you know, I think it's an expense, it's not necessary, so I don't do it. There's O-rings on the bottom of this cap as well. Again, everything we're taking off, we want to wipe it off. Just make sure there's no dirt accumulated on there. Make sure your O-ring has at least a fighting chance of sealing, you know. Okay, we're ready to drop some oil in it. Now you can use a funnel if you need to, which of course I do. I'll wipe the funnel off a little bit because it's kind of grungy. We're going to start with 2 quarts. And again, this is 10W40. That just happens to be what we're going to use in this particular season. We're in the south. When it warms up, you know, come summertime, I'll be putting something heavier in there more than likely. We're going to drop 2 quarts in there and then check the oil level. Okay. Now I can see on the sight glass that the oil level is coming up. One thing you got to realize though, that filter that we just installed is going to hold a little bit. There's going to be some in there. There's cavities in there that get galleys, I guess you'd call them. We're just going to put a little bit more in there and stop. This will give us a good baseline, a good place to start. I'm going to go ahead and put the filler cap back on. The oil level is basically in between those 2 marks, fresh oil. And we're going to give it a little run, let it run for just about a minute, and then let it sit and check it. Okay, we've put just slightly more than 2 quarts of oil in here after a filter change. And we're going to now add the remaining oil up to the top of the top indicator line on this sight glass here. This is after we've, you know, put the 2 quarts in. We've also ran the engine for about a minute, let it settle. So the oil that the oil level you see should be the true oil level. We're going to slowly add a little more. Again, this thing is supposed to hold 2.1 quarts of oil. We're going to bring it up just a little bit higher. Slowly add it, let it get a chance to get down there in the crankcase so you can see what's going on. Okay, that's about where we want it. You could go anywhere in between there, but if you get to the bottom line, you need to add some, and you shouldn't go above the top line. So that's it. Bayou 220 oil change in a nutshell. Simple, cheap, do it yourself. Save some money.